My guest Morgan has a husband who calls her beautiful, tells her to just relax while he handles everything, and works a job he doesn't love because, in his words, I'm going into battle for something worth protecting. But 3 years ago, he was verbally abusive, couldn't hold a job, and told her almost daily that he wanted a divorce. Morgan was so exhausted from carrying everything, the kids, the bills, his emotional stress, trying to keep it all together, that she finally broke. She took their 3 children and moved in with her parents. What happened between that moment and today is the reason I wanted Morgan on this podcast, because the skills she learned didn't just save her marriage. They transformed her from an exhausted, over-functioning wife into a woman who feels genuinely cherished and supported. And she's going to tell us exactly how she did it so you can do it too. My guest Morgan felt she had no option but to take the kids and move out because their constant fights had escalated into verbal abuse. But when Morgan started practicing the 6 intimacy skills, things changed dramatically. And today her marriage is blissful. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Morgan, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast.
Thank you so much. So grateful to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. All right, let's start at the very beginning. What attracted you to your husband? How did you know he was the one?
Yeah, so we met in college, and I am not one to notice a man in another relationship. Pretty much they don't exist to me. But while he was dating his girlfriend, I didn't talk to him or approach him. But I remember telling my best friend, if they ever break up, I really hope I get a chance to date him because he just looks like he's so much fun. And we were in the same ministry team, and he was the only person I knew who was trying to start ministry and start devotionals with the other boys on college campus. So he would start Bible studies in their dorms. And while everybody else, they showed up and they looked good at chapel or whatever, and then behind the scenes, they're partying. It's just very fake. He was the only one that felt like it was real through and through. In all of our conversations, as I saw him in the cafeteria, he just seemed like the realest person I've ever met. Very to the point, very deep, very direct. He had a discernment that just really stood out to me. And it still does. We ended up having breakfast together 3 times a week right off the bat. So it was nice. The opportunity just sort of opened up and the attraction only grew from there. He took his Bible back to his room and he studied for 3 days straight. And he came back to me with 4 pages of notes on all the scripture he could find. What I've seen people do is they go back to their pastor or they go back to their mentor or a human to tell them what to think. And the way that he just dove into the Bible to reach a conclusion. So that was where my attraction really grew. After that, I was pretty much going to marry him. So he proposed without asking my dad's permission, which ruffled my parents. My parents did not like him. His parents were very kind to me. There were red flags. He had a temper. He had a really bad temper, and little things would set him off in a degree that never made sense to me. For how smart he was, I just thought this is an emotional immaturity, but he knows the right answer. So eventually, I believe he will get to following his own advice and following his own wisdom. And I thought maybe once we have kids, it'll settle down. I know there was trauma with his parents. I thought he's trying to push me away before I can leave him, basically. Once we're married, he'll have the confidence and things will get better. But they really didn't. We had a baby. It got a little bit better. But he had a really hard time finding a job he enjoyed. And that has been the biggest source of pain in our marriage. He thought he was going to join the Army, active duty. That's what he was going to go to college. He wanted any degree, really, to be an officer in the Army. So he ended up joining the reserves, which meant he would be at basic training while I was having our first baby. So I was devastated. It was a lot of job hopping. He couldn't find something that paid the bills where I could stay home full time. And that was my thing coming into marriage. I want to be a homeschool mom. I don't care where we live. I don't care if we're poor. I just really want to homeschool and be a stay-at-home mom. And he promised he would never make me go to work. But he didn't really know what he wanted to do. So not being active duty, he ended up driving truck for a while. And then he went into ministry. And that ended up fizzling out around COVID. And it was a really ugly end. So he burned bridges there. And we didn't really have any community. We had moved down to Georgia just for that job. And this was around the time that I actually found the skills. So I had our 3rd baby. And he was at Army training right after I had our baby for 3 months. And my mom said she would watch all the kids for me to go visit him for a weekend. And I was just Googling looking for how to be in wife mode again. I'd been in mom mode 24/7 for 3 months while he was gone. I was burnt out. I was sleep deprived. I don't want to waste the 48 hours that I have with him just trying to wake up. So I found your podcast then, driving out to go see him. And I just enjoyed the lightheartedness of it. And it put me in the right frame of mind. But you had this idea of self-care. And I thought that was really superficial and selfish. Most of our fights were about, I didn't do a good job cleaning the house. I wasn't very organized. I'm not a good housekeeper. Our house has been messy or disorganized. I'm not good at keeping up with meals. I'm not good at keeping up with the plan. Despite wanting to homeschool, all of our days look different. He really wanted me to give our kids a routine, and he really wanted to come home to a clean, peaceful home. So that was what most of our fights were about, was you want to be home. Will you please keep the home? And I was like, I can't. The babies require all of my attention. I'm not good at organizing. I've never seen it modeled well. So when I read this about self-care, I was, yeah, right. My problem is that I can't keep up with the work he wants me to do already. So when I was with him, I found this lady who teaches you how to have better skills in marriage. But the first thing she said was self-care. And I laughed it off. And he's, yeah, that's brilliant. He said, I wish you would just do something for the fun of it. He said, it makes me so happy when you're happy. He's the reason I'm working so hard is because I want to think of you just sitting at home in your fuzzy slippers, enjoying our children. He said, I wish you had more self-care. And I was just so taken aback by that. I just thought of him as this critical. I thought my value was in performance. I just need to perform higher, higher, higher. And I really thought when I said, she thinks I just need to spend more time on self-care, he was going to be like, oh yeah, that's feminist movement right there. Just trying to put yourself first. And he had the opposite reaction. So that was when I was, okay, I'm going to look more into this. Take her seriously. Take your book seriously. And I learned a lot. I learned so much of the things that I thought were respectful were not, because I was very adamant on being a respectful wife. So I thought I was a respectful wife. But most of the things that I was doing were tangible tasks that left me energy depleted. And when I really started to listen to him, what he wanted was the goddess of fun and light. He just wanted a friend to talk to. He wanted someone to be his companion. But all these tasks that were running me into weren't the most important thing to him, I thought. So I started learning ways to do self-care with my girls. I started running with a double stroller, falling in love with it. And there were other skills, but that was the big one that I really had to focus on up front that really changed the tone in our house. Whereas I asked to be home with my girls, but I was treating it like a burden because I thought I had to prove to him that my job is so hard to earn his respect. As I want you to see how hard I'm working, because I think you're only going to love me if you respect me. And when I flipped that into instead of telling him the hard things each day, I just started telling him the things I was grateful for each day. And the whole tone in our home changed. And I started seeing things really will get as good as you can stand. But I really wanted to move to Tennessee. So we were still in Georgia at that point. I hated Georgia. And I let him know all the time that I hated Georgia. So I was, well, if these skills work so good, maybe he'll get me to Tennessee. Well, I asked him if we could, and he created a plan to get us to Tennessee. He found the company he worked for had a headquarters in Tennessee in a beautiful little town. He said, and we found out we could sell our house and earn enough money to make the move. And he said, if you're just patient with me, I already talked to the director up there because I've earned so much of a good reputation at this service center. They've put in a good word and they will move us up there next time someone retires, which will be within 18 months to 2 years. Well, that wasn't good enough for me. And I was convinced that if we didn't use this money right now when we sold our house, we would spend it between now and then, and we would never make the move, and I'd be trapped in Georgia forever. I had this narrative that if we don't do it right now, we're not going to go. So I pushed really hard. As you're a truck driver, surely there's truck driver positions. Can't we just make something work to get there now? So we did. And that's where I'll say I massively twisted what I would call the skills. I had it in my head of if I'm happy, he'll be happy. But happiness without respect is not the same as happiness with respect. And I was extremely manipulative in that whole situation. So he got us to Tennessee, and then the job offer that he had fell through. So now we're responsible for rent. And Tennessee is not like Georgia. There's not a lot of driving positions. And that led into a year of he tried 7 different jobs in 1 year. None of them paid the bills. And watching him sink deeper and deeper in depression, hating me. It went from this, we were so blissful, to he openly hated me. He wouldn't talk mean to me in front of the kids, but pretty much anytime we were behind closed doors, he's telling me he wants a divorce. He's telling me I ruined his life. He's telling me if you would have just trusted me, I would have got you here anyway. Now we're sinking in debt. We're living off of credit cards. And I just kept trying to wait it out. He got a job where he was driving overnights. And he would call me at night after the kids go to bed and just rant to me for hours about how much he hated me and how much I had ruined his life and how much he shouldn't have to be driving this job. And he would tell me if I get off the phone with him, he's just going to quit his job. So I felt like I have to just sit here and take this. And then I'd wake up in the morning and take care of the kids all day while he slept. And it was hell beyond what I can describe. It was, he wanted me to give him permission to quit, but we were already literally almost $100,000 in debt from living off of credit cards while he tried the job that he was working, even that had promised a much higher salary than what they actually offered. So he goes into it thinking he's going to be able to pay bills. We can't pay bills. He's miserable. And it was as dark as I could ever imagine. I remember just trying to be sweet with him, trying to be affectionate with him, trying to be encouraging to him. And anything I tried, he just saw as poison and manipulative. He could not receive an act of love from me. And there was one point where he had to get off work, and then he's still in the Army Reserves, and his drill unit is still in Georgia. So he gets off work and he has to drive all the way down to Georgia for the Army. And as you're so tired, as I'll drive for you. I'll just pack up all 3 kids in the back seat. You get a hotel room. I'll drive for you. I know you're exhausted, but I love you so much. Just let me come with you. And all he would say to me is, I just want a divorce. Get away from me. You don't love me. You don't care about me. I know you don't care about me. And I wouldn't take the bait, but it was, he couldn't hear anything good from me. He needed to hate me because he couldn't solve the problem. So he left. I cried a little bit, but I was deep in my self-care. I was using watercolor at the time because my girls loved it. They were 3 and 4. So it was something they could do with me to where I didn't have to answer a million questions. I had no mental capacity to mother. So I would just get out the watercolors and we would paint. And I pick up my phone. I had 10 missed phone calls from him and just ugly, ugly rants and curse words from him that I hated him and I don't deserve for him to go to the reserves to take care of me because I wasn't taking a phone call as soon as he left. I just offered to drive you. But that was really when it clicked for me not to take it personally. It was dark. It was ugly. But as I kept my side of the street as clean as possible, I was as respectful as humanly possible. As he's clearly had a break with reality. He's not even functioning in reality right now if he doesn't see how I'm treating him. So that actually, for me, was a permission slip to emotionally detach and just wait for him to work through it. I told him, if you need to quit, you can. That's when I started saying, I can't stay up all night talking on the phone. I'm sorry. If you need to quit, that's fine. I'll go live with my parents. We can live with my parents. We can live with your parents. This is clearly really, really bad, but I can't survive this. And when he kept telling me I want a divorce, at first I panicked. I called my dad. I called my sister. And my dad said, I don't think he means it. I think he can't see straight right now. When you set out to build a fort and you know you can't finish it, it's hard to find the energy to put the next brick on. He's just paralyzed because he knows going to work isn't going to pay the bills and he can't see what's what. So okay. So my dad told me not to take it seriously. So every time he told me he wanted a divorce, I said, well, that makes me really sad. I want to stay married and I love you so much. And then I started learning how to distance myself from the emotional abuse to where I just didn't accept it. When he was going to be that way or give me an ultimatum, I was okay, well, I need sleep right now, or I just can't take this phone call right now. And so that way, marriage-wise, got a little bit better, but the job situation didn't. And we got to the point where both of our cars were repossessed. We negotiated with our landlord to get a cheaper house, and then we couldn't even make rent on that. And then I went to get a job, and that job wouldn't even pay for groceries. We were talking to temp agencies. We worked so hard to figure out any combination of both of us working, and we could not make ends meet in Tennessee. It was just We weren't ready for it, especially with our bills. So then, with his permission, we were all on the same page. I went and lived with my family for 2 months, working at a factory to just try and get us caught up while he got this new job. And then when I came home, that new job fell through. So then he starts trying to get a sales job. And it really was. I mean, probably 10 jobs between us in a matter of 1 year with all of the depression and emotional abuse. And when he looked at me at that sales job and said, I'm never going to be able to get enough momentum to get us caught up. He's like, this would only work if I was earning a full-time paycheck. I learned how to do this. As I can't sit here and wait for you to go find another job. We had less than $100 in our bank account. And he started insulting me. I started insulting him. And I was just done. It had been a little bit better with the verbal abuse for a while, but I had watched him give up. I had begged him to go get help. When he went to go get help, he took himself to the ER. They put him in a mental institution, but with no therapist and there was no help. They basically punished him for reaching out. And he had to stay in that mental institution with the really crazy people, violent people, lights on 24/7. You never are allowed to be alone for 4 days. And he was, well, I'm still depressed, but now I also have nightmares from going to the mental institution. So I stopped asking him to go get help. That's when I packed up the kids and just went to my family's house against his wishes. I had been threatening to do it, but he was, don't leave me, even though he was saying he wanted a divorce. I was, look, I don't know, but I can't take the abuse anymore. I can't take how you're talking to me. So I just did. And I'm going to work at my parents' house to at least be able to afford groceries or be able to save up towards something, because I didn't feel like I could leave the kids with him. I was willing to work and stay with him. But when he got to that point of depression, it was when I left the room, he just laid on the floor. Literally not even in the bed. He just laid on the floor and stared at the ceiling like he was paralyzed. I don't think you can pick up the slack of being a stay-at-home mom, not being able to function. And then he posted on Facebook that I took his kids from him. And that's when, for me, it went from this is a really dark situation to I never want to see him again. When he posted that I was taking his kids from him after how long I had sat and waited and sifted through that, I let it all out. Made my Facebook post detailing everything I had sat through, everything he had said to me, all how patient I had been. I needed all of our friends and family to know that I was the victim and I was justified in taking our kids. But what that did long term is now all of our church doesn't respect him. All of our friends don't respect him. My parents, I put everything out there. And going back, I wish I would have opened up a little bit to people who could have helped before keeping it all to myself and then putting it all on the line. That was a big issue. And while I was at my parents' house, I'll skip forward to when I had to really dig into the skills. We had come so far. We had found so much happiness with the skills. I'd been using them for 3 years at this point. Could not figure out how to work with him in depression after I'd created this manipulative situation. But I got on a consult call with a coach, a Laura Doyle coach. And I just don't know what to do. I can't afford real coaching. I can't afford anything right now. My parents are buying our food for us. I don't really want to be divorced. This was after I'd been at my parents' house for months, but I can't fathom going back. I can't fathom trusting him to take care of me. I don't think he'll ever take care of me. As the best I can picture is I become a single mom and let him live with me like an incompetent child. I can't picture a world where I go back in that position. And she told me that I had to treat him with respect before he deserved it. And I got really mad. I listened, but it made me angry to hear that. And she told me I had to choose to trust him and then act out trust. And eventually I would genuinely trust him. She said, you can't fake it. She's like, if you're hoarding this self-righteousness over him or you don't trust him, he's going to feel it and it's going to stay ugly forever. And I don't know what I wanted. I wanted permission to just be mad. I wanted permission to be, my situation is above the skills. I get a pass. This one's too hard. He's done me over. But she basically told me, no, really, you really have to submit. She's like, if he's asking you to come home, he's been holding down a job for 3 months now. He is paying the bills. She said, you need to be respectful in that. And I didn't immediately, but I chewed on it for a while. And little did I know on his end, he was actually relinquishing control. This is about the time that he said he had a phone call with his mom where he told her, this is not my battle anymore. I'm going to do my job. I treated her horribly. I know I pushed her away. I was a monster. And I understand why she left, but I can't convince her to come home anymore. So I'm just going to hold down my job. I'm going to do the right thing. And eventually when she's ready, she'll come back.
Oh,
So he's having that conversation with his mom. I'm having this conversation with the coach. And I felt a big shift in him. I started speaking lovingly to him. And at first he was confused, but if you love me and you trust me, then why are you keeping the kids at your parents' house? Why aren't you here? So I had to pray about it hard. And he asked me to come home for our anniversary, which would have been it was our 8th anniversary. And I just can't. If I come home, I'm going to be resentful. I'm still going to be skittish and just waiting for you to make a mistake. I know I'm not genuinely there right now. And I don't want to come home and keep repeating our same patterns. So he said, okay. He said, but I really want you to come home as soon as you can. So I prayed hard for that whole week, and I started not being able to sleep through the night. It felt like I was waking up in the night with tugs on my heart from the Holy Spirit. And it was when he stopped asking me to come home. That's when I started feeling convicted. Okay, I really do feel safe to come home. And he had this job. He'd had it for a few months. His boss was still horrible, but it was making that transition to where he'd always call me when he had problems at work. And I always felt that it was my job to help him solve it. And I had to practice with this job being, man, that really is hard. Validating how hard it is without taking responsibility. And that was a very hard transition. And again, it was my dad's advice. My dad happens to know the skills, being a man, believe it or not. He was a really good person to talk to through this. But he just wants validation for that fact that it's hard. And he wants to know that you're going to trust him with whatever he does with it. So I started saying, I trust you to handle this. And he said, but his boss was genuinely crazy. She ripped out the sun visor. He's a truck driver. She ripped out the sun visor. So he's driving into the sun with no shade, nothing to protect him. The brakes were faulty. And days where the brakes aren't working, she's telling him he still has to take these loads. And he's afraid to stand up to her because he doesn't want to get fired, because then I'm going to stay gone longer. So I had to get to where I told him, I trust you. I know your priorities are to take care of us. If she fires you, I'm not going to hold it against you. And from that point on, when I said it and meant it, our whole dynamic of his work being my job completely went away. Him calling me at work, him being stressed about or putting his work stress on me, it just completely went away. When I started saying, I don't have the capacity to carry your stress and my stress, but I trust you and I have your back. That dynamic was huge, and that finally went away. And the money thing was a really big thing too. After we'd been through that, I got a separate bank account. I didn't want to share the money that I was making with him. I wanted to keep it on the side as a safety cushion if he quits again or if things go south. But really just trusting your advice to surrender and not hold the money separately. I took the cash that I had earned. I surprised him. I came home without the kids earlier than I told him I was going to come home. And I was able to sincerely apologize for all the hate. I told my side of the story of all the hateful things he said to me and how dark it was for me. But I was able to genuinely apologize for broadcasting everything publicly. I told him I hated him. I told him I never wanted to see him. I told him he was a horrible father. I said all the hateful things you could think of once I got out of our house. All the stuff that I'd been withholding, trying to make it work, it all came out, and I wanted him to not exist. And I let him know I didn't hold anything back. And I was happy to hold his kids away from him. So I genuinely met my apology. And I was so grateful that he was holding space for me, because one of my fears was if I left, he would never let me come back home. He'd be done with me. But he got a job. He got a job where I wanted to live. He still found something in that town instead of going to his family. He could have been, okay, you're leaving me. We're getting evicted. I'm going to go live by my family and I'll get a job. And if you ever want to come live with me, fine. But he held space where I wanted to live. He ended up finding a job. So I came home by myself, and I came with cash that I had earned waitressing, and I handed it to him. And I watched his whole body shift. You could tell he was on guard, and that when I came home, we'd be coexisting and co-parenting. And then I'd come home just to share the kids with him, but that we wouldn't feel unified. But when I apologized through tears for everything that I'd said and how I held the kids away and divorcing him in my heart and being so prideful, his face softened, his posture tightened up. I could just see him in shock, and he received me and we cried. And I can say that moment truly was pivotal. That we haven't had the same marriage since. I asked him, I said, can we please just commit to being unified? I said, I will trust you. I will follow your leadership. If it means living here, if it means living anywhere else. I said, I've failed you. I manipulated you. But ultimately, I've seen the single side of life, and it's dark. And I'd rather be with you raising our kids, and just grateful to be a stay-at-home wife and grateful to run the home. Because working sucks. Like, I've tried. I've tried to get a job even with my math degree. I have so much more reverence for how hard it is and how hard it is to find a job. And you're driving a truck that you don't want to drive. He's a brilliant man who's creative, and he's a visionary. So truck driving is not his line of work, but he's doing it just so that I can be homeschooling our kids. And it really was, from that point forward, I don't recognize the people who lived the marriage before. There has not been backsliding or second guessing, and there's been temptations. But when I say those words out loud, I feel it come up, and I'll say, well, I don't really understand this, but I trust you. And I just say that instead of arguing I want to, or questioning him or belittling him. And then I listen, and he talks me through it. And inevitably I'm, oh yeah, I'm lucky. I'm lucky that he's the one in the leadership right now, because I've got a good life.
I mean, this is an incredibly humble and courageous thing that you did, going back without the kids and apologizing for all those things, disrespect, being prideful. And the reaction that you got from him is a testimony to how vulnerable you were in that
Yeah.
moment. And his response, yeah, that was so loving. It was so loving of you to do it. And you both are forever changed from this one
Yeah.
act. Really super duper courageous act, big gesture, but also incredibly mature and vulnerable and
Yeah.
respectful. So impressive. That scene, it just sounds like a movie where, and then everything just,
Yeah.
so,
Everything that you want to happen.
I mean, I usually say, was there a moment when you said, hey, the skills are really working? And I guess that moment really is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So catch us up. So what is your marriage like now? What's your family like now?
From the moment we committed to being better for each other, I think Satan has thrown every dart that he could at us, because the next year was another year of nightmarish issues, but where I got to see him tried by fire and stepping up and leading and protecting us over and over again. So that job that he had when I came home, my dad had said something, we'll see in 90 days. He's like, once you get home, we'll see in 90 days if he's still working a job. My best friend had said, you're going to have to choose between your kids and your husband. How many times are you going to run away from him before? Because I had left once before, back when things went south with his job. So she's, how many times are you going to leave your husband before you finally just get smart enough to leave for good? She's, women, it takes them 7 times. And this is the girl who taught me respect. My best friend, I was so close to her because she was the one, we dreamed of being respectful, stay-at-home wives. She's the one who really modeled putting your husband first, because my mom is very resistant to respect or the skills or anything like that. She's very self-preservation mode. So my best friend is where I saw that modeled to where I knew I wanted to be that way. So to have her say, you're going to have to choose between your husband and your kids because this isn't working and you're in a dangerous situation, that devastated me. I think I cried harder after that conversation than I did when I actually left him. Because I felt like now if I stay in this marriage, I don't even have the approval of this person that I really look up to. She's literally just sitting there waiting for it to fail. My sister told me I was in a dangerous situation and she never wanted to see me go back home. My mom warned me not to go back home. My dad was, yeah, we'll see in 90 days if he's still working a job. So it really did feel like everyone was betting against us. But I mean, they had a reason to. We had a track record of being reckless and things being very dark. So to go back and his boss, I told you she was crazy. Well, it wasn't even a month and a half later, he got sick and he called for a sick day and he waited as long as possible. Look, I'm throwing up. I can't drive a truck for 12 hours today. Puking is not safe. So she told him she's pulled him off the route for 2 weeks and that he might not have a job even after that. So he called in sick for one day and she fired him essentially because what we learned was she didn't have a route for him after that. She just got somebody else on it. So we would have been in that same dark situation. And he talked to me about moving in with his brother in Texas so that we didn't go right back down that same path of not having a job. And that's where I wanted to argue with him of your brother's crazy, or he already has a wife and 3 kids. And now we have 3 kids and we'd all be living in a house with 3 bedrooms. And I know they don't have our lifestyle. They do drugs and stuff, but that bit my tongue. And as if that's what it takes, if you need to go live with your brother to get your footing, to save up enough money to get us a place, and let's go. And by the end of the day, he was okay. I swore I would never drive regional because that means he's home only for 2 days out of every week. But I think it's going to be better for us and you and the kids, and you'll be able to stay home if I just take this job that I swear I'd never do. But because of how you trust me and because of how I know this is our home and I feel like it's our sanctuary and I have something to protect, it feels like it's worth it. I feel like I'm going into battle every week, but I'm going into battle for something that's worth protecting. So he got a job to drive regional. And then right before that, actually, I swore I was never going to have any more kids with him. I regretted putting our kids through what they'd already been through. But right after I got home and things were really, really good with no sign of issues, I said, I really want another baby, but I was afraid to ask him because I felt like I'd already put so much on him. And we just recovered from my last emotional whim of, oh, I really want to go to Tennessee. So I was afraid to ask him. But I saw a quote that said, when you're deciding to grow your family, don't decide it based on how you want the next 2 years to look. Grow it based on how you want your Thanksgiving table to look in 20 years. And as soon as I saw that, I said, yep, I want a Thanksgiving table full of children and grandchildren. So I hope he wants the same thing too. And well, I'll ask him, but I'll ask him respectfully instead of manipulative. I did with the Tennessee thing. So I came to him and I said, I realize this might sound crazy because you already think I'm not good at keeping up with housework and kids and all that stuff. But I really want another baby. But I understand if that's just too much to ask. I said, you are single-handedly providing for us. We have a big, beautiful family. I'm so happy. If you say no, I'm going to understand. I just wanted to let you know I do want one. And I told him that quote that I had read. And again, I see his whole face shift. He lights up and he said, that's so beautiful. And he said, you're wrong. I do think you're excellent at taking care of the house and the children. You're doing an incredible job. And I'd be so proud to have another baby with you. Can we have 7? Okay. So we decided to have another baby. And as soon as I got pregnant, we started praying for twins. I had a miscarriage. And that was another opportunity for things to go south. He is fired from his job. I have a miscarriage. He decides to go regional. I get pregnant again, and we started praying for twins, and we found out it was twins. So we were over the moon excited. And then our house, the roof was literally leaking so bad. Water's just coming in through the light fixtures, and it's seeping in through the walls onto the floor. Our fridge stopped working. Our washing machine broke because the laundry room was detached. It was too cold, so it froze. Our oven stopped working, and the landlord wouldn't fix it. So we've got 3 kids in this house with roof leaking. Again, we've had nothing but financial issues. So how do we just pack up and move? And then I'm pregnant with twins. So I don't have a refrigerator to even cook for the kids. My husband's now gone 5 days a week. So he's not even home in the evenings for me to go to the grocery store and stuff. So things got extremely stressful. And all we kept saying is, this is nothing compared to the stress of being separated. Going through this unified in goals and being able to cover each other in love each night is easier than when we had money, but we were on different terms. Back in Savannah, when I was so angry at him that we were living in Georgia. So he's like, I'd take this being unified with you over anything else. So it was good. And I will say the biggest piece of evidence to me where I was, wow, we really have made a 180. We ended up getting kicked out of that house, even though we decided to stay. That was one of those decisions where we can try to leave when the lease is up, even though you're very pregnant. It will be hard to move. I don't have enough time off to move us properly. We'd have to spend all of our money on a down deposit, and we need to save for a new vehicle to fit our twins in. Or we can stay here in this falling apart house for one more year and try to put enough money away that we can easily move into another house. Plus, our credit was shot. We had horrible credit. We were deciding to declare bankruptcy. So the week we decided to declare bankruptcy was the week we found out our twins were actually very high risk, and one of them was showing signs that his placenta might fail before we made it to delivery. He was very growth restricted, and they didn't know if he was going to grow enough to survive birth. And then we got kicked out of our house all the same week. With that decision, I had said, this is too heavy of a decision for me before we knew we were going to get kicked out. I don't know if we should move or if we should buy a car. And he had decided to stay for another year to put the money towards the car. And then we didn't end up getting that decision. And we had a very hard time finding a place with credit. But we didn't turn on each other. We just stayed grounded, decided to start solving the problem together. My friend knew a realtor who put in a good word for us and moved us into a house almost 3 times the size for the same amount of rent, with a huge backyard and a safer neighborhood with heating, and the roof doesn't leak, and and it has good insulation. Is such a gift that we were so angry about, because I was so mad the landlord kicked us out after we had sat there and went through so much. And my husband calls the landlord and keeps his wits about him, tells them we have a right to sue, and we weren't suing because we didn't want to get kicked out of the house. But now we have nothing to lose. You're kicking us out anyway. So he got our full security deposit back, got a full extra months of rent. So we were able to use that for a deposit on the new house. So he just worked it out for us. And the boys, we were going to get ultrasounds 3 times a week because they were watching Archie, our twin B, because as soon as he started showing signs of failure, they were going to see if they could deliver. So long story short, they did make it to 27 weeks. They were born at 1 pound and 2 pounds on oxygen and breathing support and all the things. It was extremely scary, traumatic to watch. I ended up living in the NICU with them. And then my other 3 kids went between my parents' house and friend's house so that I could be there with the babies. Again, my husband's working 5 days a week overnight, so he can't even pick them up at night. So stress, all the stress that you could imagine. But to see him still constantly covering me in affection, constantly, that's so much more stress than a man normally deals with. But he was carrying it with so much dignity. And then his partner quit on him. So we're in another position where yet again, he went regionals to do teams so that he could have plenty to make ends meet. His partner quit on him. And to drive single is 3/4 of what he was getting paid, almost down to half of what he was getting paid. So I'm in a position where I have to find another job or we're not going to pay the bills. And he called me almost reluctantly, not to vent to me like he normally would have or blame me like he used to do. He said, I'm sorry, I have to let you know. So I don't want you to stress about this. Your whole job is to relax and enjoy those babies and feed them good, calm energy. He said, I will figure this out. And then he called me a few hours later and said, I have an interview with another trucking company that's going to more than pay the bills. And they pretty much hired me on the spot. I just have to go through the motions of the interview. So I was, where was this when you were dying last year? He just solved it that quick. So things aren't just good because things physically got better. Things physically got a lot worse after we committed to our marriage. But he has continued to just step up and lead and make things better and better and better in ways I never dreamed.
So you're seeing this really capable husband that you didn't know you had, it sounds like, in the
Right.
battle. Who knew that
Right.
he was gonna get you a bigger house and get a better job
Yeah.
and and I just it's so moving the part where I told myself I would never drive regional, but you because you trust me, this is worth it. I have something valuable to protect. That part's so moving. And that's what I see. It's back to what your dad said about if you're building a fort, you can't even put on that next brick if you don't think you can finish it.
Yeah.
But your husband feels like he can be successful. He's proud and happy to make these sacrifices for his family. And your job is to just relax and give those babies peaceful energy. So,
Yeah.
how old are your twins now?
8 months old. So we spent 5 months in the NICU, but they came home healthy with less than a 30% chance that they would both come home healthy. And they came home on oxygen, but they are chunky, happy babies now. We're still not taking them in public for high risk reasons. But yeah, we're very, very blessed that we've got a house full of really happy kids.
That's
And
awesome.
another, just one moment I wanted to share was just such a testament to his character because I said he had a bad temper. I said he was really emotionally immature. And I got to a point where I was, maybe this is just how he's going to be, or maybe eventually he'll be good with me, but he'll just always struggle with the temper. We had a situation in the hospital where back-to-back days, due to their mistakes, our baby almost died. The little 1-pounder needed surgery, and while they were trying to intubate him, they did it wrong, and his whole body turned blue, and he flatlined. It was terrifying. And then the very next day, something got lodged in his breathing tube, and they plugged it, and it came unplugged, and they plugged it into the wrong wall. So he turned blue again. You shouldn't ever have to see your baby be without oxygen long enough. Terrifying. So I have him on the phone. I think they have him stable. It was a 30-minute ordeal of doctors. You can hear them asking each other questions where they didn't know why he wasn't coming back to life. They didn't know why he was blue. I don't know why it's not working. And you don't want to hear doctors saying, I don't know what's going on. So I'm relaying this to him. And this is 2 days in a row. We're having catastrophic issues at their fault with our high risk baby. And he's asking me all these questions. I was like, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on. He said, well, put me on the phone with the doctor. And this is where it's going to come out. He's just going to rip into them. It's all going to come out. And it's justified. I'm angry right now, too. Well, the
Terrifying.
doctor comes to me about 45 minutes later, and she said, gosh, it's hearing other people validate him that gets me so emotional to hear them see what I see. But she said, you're married to such an incredible man. She said, I could not believe the way he was able to put his fear and terror into words without lashing out and without being accusatory, to just ask the hard questions and be real about how terrifying it is. But to be so level-headed in such a brutal situation. She said, we take a lot of crap from a lot of people. She said, but your husband, you're so lucky to be married to him. And she said, the compassion he just has for you and for your kids, and to see how happy your kids are here. I just dream of having what you have one day. I never thought I'd hear somebody say that about my marriage, especially in such a hard situation.
And you thought he was going to rage at them.
I did. I thought this is where it all comes out. Because, I mean, I explained to you all the other things that were going on, too. It was job, house. I'm not home. I'm not making meals. I'm not
There's
holding
3
down the
other
fort.
kids.
So we were at level 10 stress. And even in that, to a complete stranger, I was really just in awe.
And this is the same guy that was verbally abusive all the time. It seems like he had a personality transplant.
I think so. So you ask sometimes if you feel like he changed. And I know sometimes it's just a story of opening your eyes to what you have. But he did. And I'm so, so grateful. Some change in me inspired change in him, and vice versa. But he did make a 180. He chose to completely change the kind of man that he was going to be. And he's telling me he's inspired by having a woman who trusts him, who respects him. And in that season before we moved to Tennessee, where I was practicing the skills, I started telling him the truth of what I believe in him and what I believe he's capable of. And I saw him come to life as this provider and protector. But then when we came here, he couldn't handle the devastation of losing it all. But all those words were still there where he knew I looked up to him. He knew I adored him. He knew when he kept saying he wanted a divorce and I said, I love you and I want to make this work. Because I knew I had something worth fighting for. And when I
Wow.
asked him if I could come on, if I should start sharing our story, I wasn't even sure about the podcast. I feel like we have a responsibility to tell people what's possible, but I also feel icky about talking about how ugly it was. He said, no, you do have a responsibility. He told me, you need to talk about this. He said, and when you do, he said, I know you'll want to sugarcoat it and you'll want to skip over some of the worst parts. He said, promise me you'll tell our story and think of it like you're throwing out a life raft. He said, I would have done anything for a life raft at that point. He said, every ugly detail you share of what I did to you adds a rope to that life raft of the person that it can help, of someone who's drowning right now. Okay. Hard to say no to that.
That is amazing. That is so humble, so wise,
Yeah.
absolutely true. Somebody's listening right now who thinks her situation's completely hopeless, and she hears about yours and is going to see a lighthouse, a possibility for herself. So, gosh, well, thank him for that. That's
I
so
will.
generous of him.
And he also said to thank you. He said, thanks for being a part of the family and for saving our family. Truly.
So sweet. I love that. Thank you so much. So, did you know you had all this power when, I guess in the battle day, did you ever think that you'd be able to turn this around just through your own actions? That's how
No,
okay.
no,
Yeah.
through all of the journaling and praying and desperation, I thought I was clinging on to get to a life of survivability. I thought it would just be not fights or just not nightmares, but I never thought it would be bliss and peace and rejoicing and so much happiness. And I never thought, I really did. I felt powerless. I just kept praying that God would change him. Power of a Praying Wife is another one that really helped me get through. And she's your favorite prayer, God change him. And you become blind to the ways that you have power in your marriage. And I was so blind to what is to be a respectful wife, or that what I can tell when you're soft or not. And that vulnerability. When I get up in my masculine energy and I start treating it like it's me versus him, sometimes for absolutely no reason, he'll be like, you're doing it. And okay, give me a second. Let me get soft. Let me hear you. And a crazy power because you have to become soft and vulnerable. But then it's so pleasant just to be led.
And that's when the magic happens. That's when he steps up and takes such good care of you. And you have so much evidence of that. This really sounds like a miracle. And it sounds like even the people that knew you best are probably pretty shocked about where you are
Yeah.
now in your marriage.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
I have
The family members that were saying you're never going to make it?
yeah, I have a few good friends who saw me through. There was one friend who said, you made a covenant in sickness and in health, for better or for worse. She said, this is the sickness, this is the worst, but you need to see it through. So it was nice to have a voice cheering for me. And now on the other side of it, now that we're good, she's happy for us. But it felt like most people were either excited to get in on the drama to tell me what a victim I was. And then when things got better, they're oddly quiet. Those people aren't around anymore. Or the people who, understandably just distanced themselves when things were really ugly, because I don't think anybody knew what to tell me. But it was shocking how many people, when I was looking for skills, when I was looking for how do I cope with this? If I'm not trying to leave him, how do I support him? How do I survive this? And most people's, not even advice, most people's input was, oh, he shouldn't treat you like that. Well, I need something more than he shouldn't, because what am I going to do? Go home and be, well, they said that you shouldn't treat me like this, and I'm really the victim, and I'm right here. It was just reading your book over and over again and listening to the podcast of having to believe, become softer, become humble, stay off of his paper. It was really dark. It was a problem I couldn't solve. Maybe ultimately I did need to take some space and stay with my parents for a while, but I didn't have to divorce him, and it was something worth working through.
Yeah.
And it's just shocking how many people are quick to tell you to leave your marriage, and their first advice is go to the police so that you have it on record first, so that if he
Oh.
ask for a
Uh,
divorce, you have custody. I'm not getting the police involved. I'm not looking, there's no physical abuse going on here. I'm talking to a Christian counselor trying to figure out how to stay married. And another Christian counselor, when I went back home, was just make sure you don't have sex with him because that's your main thing that you have holding out that will get him to stay in line. I was like, this is horrible advice. It's all of this protect yourself against your husband mindset. That's not helping your marriage.
Not at all. Not at all. And you were saying earlier on how discerning your husband is, but it sounds like you had good discernment too. You listened to the people whose words were standing for your marriage, that were
Right.
serving, not the ones that. And there were so many voices saying you'll never make it. So you showed them quite the
Yeah.
opposite. So miraculous, and I just give you so much credit for being so courageous and so committed. I mean, you said earlier, being respectful was an important value to me, so therefore I thought it was. But you actually really went through the process of learning what that looks like and then doing it, saying you are and being respectful and not the same thing at all. And you get a completely different response. You're such great evidence of that when you are respectful. So congratulations on taking that hero's journey, really.
Thank you.
So what about though? So let's just talk to a woman who's listening right now who is where you were: verbal abuse, not supporting the family, can't hold down a job, and it's and threatening divorce, and is feeling like it cannot get better, and it isn't me. It really is him. Everyone else says it's him. It's him. I prayed for him. She wants what you have now, which is feeling so taken care of, feeling relieved of that burden of having to make all those decisions, and being able to see her husband, grow a foot taller from seeing her respect and her trust in her eyes. And she wants the Thanksgiving table that you're going to have. And what, what do you, what do you, what's your best tip for her? What should she do?
Just you often say to start with self-care. And I think that's what most of the women on here say. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to do self-care until I started reading your book. I think we really do fall into duty mode, and the scarier things are, the more we fall into duty, responsibility mode. But if you can just flip that and really, really get honest about what speaks to your heart, even if it's super simple, going for a walk. We were broke and I had no friends and I couldn't take my kids anywhere. So my resources were limited, but watercoloring or running outside, get really honest about the things that refuel your tank to try to find that softness. Because I've talked to some friends and they get really angry about the fact that we have to go first when it comes to marriage. Well, men are supposed to be the leader, so they should be leading relationally. No, but really it's a superpower. But you have to find that softness. And I still have to do it today. I get burnt out. And when I get in that high strung duty mode or task mode, it's not attractive and it's hard to think clearly. So the questions that you give of how do I feel? What do I want? I had to ask myself that 30 times a day. In the darkest days, how do I feel? What do I want? And then you get to start being grateful that, oh, I do have the freedom to listen to my favorite song. It would be as simple as just taking my kids in the car and driving nowhere, listening to my favorite song, feeling fresh air on my face. That's refueling my tank. That's what I want. So getting really good and really honest about just answering that. How do I feel? What do I want? To find that softness, because real gratitude isn't going to come from task mode. Real gratitude that your husband can sniff out is going to come from softness.
I love the way you describe task mode, and I relate to it so much. It's almost like a switch that flips, right? And I get
Yes.
into that mode too, like efficiency mode. We got to get these things done. And it's not soft and it's not attractive. And it's actually not fun to be in that mode anyway. It
Right.
doesn't really feel good. So you got yourself out of it by asking yourself 30 times a day, how do I feel? What do I want? And then
Yeah.
I love your answers, because that sounds tough, Morgan. I mean, no resources to work with, right? I can't spend money. Maybe I can't get all these kids out of this house, but you're just finding a way, finding a song. We've taken out the watercolors, really, really being open to the possibility that you could make yourself happy and find that again. So I love that. I applaud that. And what do you think you would say to Morgan if you could go back in time and tell her what you know now?
Again, a phrase. I've studied your work. Your words are the first ones that pop into my head. But you say things will get as good as you can stand. And when I couldn't stand reality, I did start journaling, and I spent so much time in spouse fulfilling prophecies. And there was a season where things were okay. And my husband, he'll compliment me, but he doesn't really call me beautiful. So I started writing in my journal, my husband calls me beautiful. And he came home and like 2 days in a row, he said, wow, you just look so beautiful. So to see it come off the page into real life. And there was another time we were fighting and he would get so jealous and so defensive. And I was so mad at him for nitpicking out of nothing. But I hear your spouse fulfilling prophecy as well. I'm just going to tell him he's doing the right thing, even though I know he's not. So I texted him and I was, well, I'm really glad that you want to be unified in this and that you're leading me through this conflict. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say. And I was so bitter typing it because I thought he was going to just lash back. And he texted back, thank you so much. And then he called me and he was, thank you for seeing that I really just want to be unified with you. And we had a beautiful conversation in the middle of this ugly, I thought it was just going to be verbal abuse and the whole 9 yards. So I would say things will get as good as you can stand, and just keep focusing on what you want to increase and have the patience to stick around long enough, because you got to stay off his paper and trust him with it. And it might not be on your timing, but it's coming.
That was a great story. I love that story. You're texting this and you're thinking, you're 7. This is a bold-faced lie. This is not true at all. I'm just gonna text it. And I mean, I don't know what you thought, how he thought he was gonna react, but not that sounds like. So, and I feel like you get all the credit, right, for creating that piece. The way you showed up brought the peace, brought out the
Yeah.
best in it. That's when you expected the best. That is the ultimate, and is expecting the best from your husband. So, how about the kids? How do you think this has affected your kids that you've studied the intimacy skills and been practicing them?
That will be hard to talk about without crying. Obviously, my oldest saw things I didn't want her to see. We really love being parents, and that has always been our common ground. Even in the darkest days before I found the skills at all, he was already emotionally abusive and stuff back then. But we did our best to keep it out of the face of the kids. But unfortunately, they heard things that they never should have heard. They heard fights and yelling and things I never wanted for my kids. But they can tell a difference in the home. They can tell there's no eggshells to walk on. It used to be, this made me cry when it happened. It used to be when I would call him, they would make themselves scarce because they knew when I'm on the phone with him, it's probably going to be a fight. And this is when they were little. But recently, my daughter's 8 now. And I forget if she said it to my husband and he told me or if she told me directly. But I had been on the phone with him for an hour and I just am laughing the whole time. And she said, you're on the phone with daddy, aren't you? I said, yeah. She goes, I can tell because whenever you laugh a lot, you're always talking to daddy. And that's such a testament that that's her experience for the past year and a half now. I don't know. It feels like it's been so much longer than it has because it really does feel like it's a world away. But for them to know when mommy's talking to daddy, she's probably going to be laughing a lot. And then when we're home, when he's home, it's just laughter. I mean, there's just so much joy. We used to dread when he would come home because even though he wouldn't lash out in front of the kids, it would just be a heaviness. You could just tell he was depressed and grumpy from work, but he comes home and our home is a sanctuary. There's so much joy, so much peace, so much cuddling. We pack more fun into a weekend than I think most people pack into a month because it's a holiday. I mean, we treat every weekend like a holiday when daddy's home. And we talk all the time about now our twin boys and our youngest son. Adeline was right behind us. So she's my 7-year-old. She saw the ugly of it too. She's not as verbal. So I don't know. Edie talked about a lot of it. Our 7-year-old didn't so much. But the boys should only know peace. We talk about how whole future now, and now they're going to see what I told him is I feel like God gave you 2 more boys because he knew we needed more men in the world like you. As soon as you made that turnaround to start setting this example and leading with authority and strength, and in the church, he's willing to say things that most people aren't. He has this truly incredible dichotomy of discernment and compassion where he'll say the hard thing, but he will wrap you in love. He's a chaplain, so he gets lots of experience there too. And so I think God gave us 2 more boys because he knew the world needed men to learn from you. And I do. I think we've created an entirely new legacy with this 180.
And I just hear your admiration for him in that the world needed more men like you. I mean, he must feel so respected. and and I hear that. It sounds great. This was the same man that was verbally abusive, right? It's a totally different guy. It's just amazing. Well, Morgan, I know what you've done. In some ways, you make it sound easy. In some ways, you do. When you say, "Oh, I just texted him," I know you want to be unified, right? I know how hard that is. Or when you drove back and apologized by yourself. And this was incredibly courageous, what you've done to restore your family. And I want to give you my Best Wife Award to congratulate
Thank
you
you.
on this incredible, miraculous transformation that actually I give you all the credit for
Thank you.
choosing your faith and your humility, coming humble and so respectful. Congratulations.
Thank, thank you for leading the way.
Thank you. This has been great. What an inspiring story. And I'm so grateful we got to hear the whole thing. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
If you related to Morgan, if you're exhausted from carrying everything, working so hard but feeling unsupported, the Empowered Wife book has helped hundreds of thousands of women stop overfunctioning and start feeling genuinely cherished. It's a way to put down what isn't yours to carry, get your softness back, and finally feel supported by the man you married. You'll find a link to the first chapter of The Empowered Wife in the show notes.